Chapter 1. The White Lady of Ballet Drive. Ballet Drive in Quezon City, Philippines, is infamous for sightings of a ghostly figure known as the White Lady. Legend has it that she is the spirit of a young woman who died in a tragic accident along the road. Many have reported seeing her late at night, appearing suddenly in the rearview mirror of unsuspecting drivers. One rainy night, 18-year-old Maria was driving home alone after a late-night study session. Her car's headlights cut through the thick fog that blanketed the road. She'd heard the stories but never believed them. That changed when she saw a figure in a white dress standing on the side of the road. Thinking it was a stranded traveler, Maria slowed down. The woman's face was obscured by her long black hair. Maria rolled down her window to offer help, but as soon as she did, the woman vanished. Heart pounding, Maria sped away, her eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. That's when she saw her, sitting in the back seat, her face twisted in a grotesque grin. Maria's screams echoed through the night as she lost control of her car, crashing into a tree. The locals say her spirit now haunts Ballet Drive, joining the White Lady in her eternal vigil. Chapter 2. The Wendigo of the Canadian Wilderness. In the dense forests of northern Canada, the legend of the Wendigo strikes fear into the hearts of anyone who dares to venture too deep. This malevolent spirit is said to possess anyone who resorts to cannibalism to survive, turning them into a monstrous creature driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Mark, an experienced hiker, set out on a solo expedition to conquer the remote trails of the Canadian wilderness. He was well prepared, or so he thought. After a week, he lost his way. As days turned into weeks, his supplies dwindled and desperation set in. One night, weakened and delirious, Mark heard whispers carried by the wind. They beckoned him, promising safety and food. Following the voices, he stumbled upon a cave. Inside, the air was frigid, and the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In the darkness, he saw it, eyes glowing with hunger and malice. The Wendigo lunged at him, and Mark's screams filled the night. Search parties later found his campsite, but there was no trace of Mark. Legends say his spirit roams the forest, eternally hunted by the Wendigo he became. Chapter 3. The Churals of India. In rural India, the legend of the Chural is a chilling tale told to children to keep them from wandering into the night. A Chural is the vengeful spirit of a woman who died during childbirth or was wronged in life. She lures men with her beauty and then reveals her true, hideous form before draining their life force. AJ, a young traveler, was exploring the ancient ruins in a remote village. As dusk fell, he realized he was lost. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over him. He remembered the stories but laughed them off, until he saw her. A beautiful woman in a red sari, standing under a banyan tree, her eyes filled with sorrow. Mesmerized, AJ approached her. She beckoned him closer, and he followed, entranced. When he was within reach, her face twisted into a terrifying mask of death. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and her fingers turned into talons. AJ tried to run, but it was too late. The Chural's icy touch drained his life away, leaving only a withered husk behind. Chapter 4. The Rusalka of Eastern Europe. The Rusalka, a water nymph of Slavic folklore, is said to be the spirit of a woman who died violently near water. These spirits haunt rivers and lakes, luring unsuspecting men to their watery graves with their beauty and song. In a small village in Ukraine, the legend of the Rusalka was well known. Ivan, a fisherman, often scoffed at the tales. One night, while fishing on the Dniester River, he heard a haunting melody. Hypnotized, he followed the sound to a secluded part of the riverbank. There, he saw her, a stunning woman with long, flowing hair singing a mournful tune. Entranced by her beauty, Ivan waded into the water. The rusalka's song grew louder, more insistent. As he reached out to touch her, her eyes turned cold and merciless. She pulled him into the depths, her laughter mingling with his screams. Ivan's boat was found drifting aimlessly the next morning, but his body was never recovered. The villagers say the rusalka claimed another soul for her watery kingdom. Chapter 5. The Black-Eyed Children of America. The legend of the Black-Eyed Children is a relatively modern urban legend in America. These mysterious children with pitch-black eyes are said to appear at night knocking on doors and asking for help. Those who let them in are never seen again. Tom, a skeptical journalist, decided to investigate the legend. He set up cameras around his home and waited. For weeks, nothing happened. Then, one stormy night, there was a knock on his door. Peering through the peephole, he saw two children, a boy and a girl, standing on his porch. Their eyes were completely black. Ignoring the growing dread in his chest, Tom opened the door slightly and asked what they wanted. The children asked to come in and use the phone. Their voices were flat, devoid of emotion. Tom's instinct screamed at him to shut the door, but his curiosity got the better of him. As he let them in, the air grew heavy and oppressive. The children's eyes bored into his soul, filling him with an overwhelming sense of dread. The lights flickered, and Tom felt a cold hand grasp his wrist. The children's mouths twisted into malevolent grins as they whispered, "You shouldn't have let us in." Tom's screams echoed through the empty house. The next morning, his colleagues found his home abandoned, the cameras destroyed, and no sign of Tom. The legend of the Black-Eyed Children had claimed another victim. Chapter 6. The Teketeke of Japan. In Japan, the Teketeke is a horrifying spirit of a woman who was cut in half by a train. Her upper torso, propelled by her hands or elbows, drags herself along, searching for her lower half. Her name comes from the sound she makes as she moves. Yuki, a university student, stayed late at the library studying for exams. She missed the last bus and had to walk home. Taking a shortcut through the train tracks, she heard a strange noise, teek-tek-a-tek. It grew louder, closer. Turning around, she saw her, a woman with a grotesque, bloodied upper body, dragging herself towards Yuki with alarming speed. Paralyzed with fear, Yuki watched as the Teketeke closed the distance. The ghost's eyes burned with rage and sorrow. Yuki tried to run, but it was too late. The Teketeke's claw-like hands grabbed her ankles, and with a final echoing shriek, Yuki was dragged into the darkness. Her friends searched for her, but Yuki was never found. The legend of the Teketeke continues to haunt the tracks, reminding all who hear it of the vengeful spirit that seeks to make others suffer as she did. Chapter 7. The Manananggal of the Philippines. Another terrifying legend from the Philippines is the Manananggal, a creature that can sever its upper torso from its lower half and grow bat-like wings. It preys on pregnant women, sucking the hearts of unborn children. Anna, a young, expectant mother, moved to a rural village for peace and quiet. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard flapping outside her window. Peeking through the curtains, she saw a horrific sight. A woman with wings, her torso separated from her legs, hovering outside. Anna screamed and tried to close the window, but the Manananggal was too quick. It burst into the room, its eyes glowing with hunger. Anna's cries for help went unanswered as the creature lunged at her, its sharp tongue extending towards her swollen belly. Just as the Manananggal was about to strike, the dawn's first light filled the room, and the creature shrieked in pain, retreating into the night. The villagers found Anna unconscious but alive. They fortified her home with garlic and salt to ward off the creature. Though Anna survived, the fear of the Manananggal's return lingered, a dark shadow over the peaceful village. Chapter 8. The Jinn of the Middle East. In Middle Eastern folklore, the jinn are supernatural beings made of smokeless fire. They can be benevolent or malevolent, and encountering an evil jinn can bring about unimaginable terror and misfortune. Ahmed, an archaeologist, was excavating an ancient site in the Arabian desert. He unearthed a mysterious artifact, a lamp covered in strange markings. Ignoring his colleagues' warnings, Ahmed took the lamp back to his tent. That night, he was awoken by a chilling breeze and a whispering voice. Lighting the lamp, he was confronted by a towering figure with glowing eyes and a menacing grin. The jinn had been released. It offered Ahmed a choice: serve it or suffer its wrath. Defiant, Ahmed refused. The jinn's laughter echoed through the desert as it unleashed its fury. The excavation site was found abandoned the next day, the lamp shattered. Ahmed's note spoke of the jinn's curse, but he was never seen again. The legend of the jinn serves as a warning of the dangers that lie beneath the sands, waiting to be unleashed by the curious and the foolish. Chapter 9. The La Llorona of Mexico. La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, is a tragic figure in Mexican folklore. The spirit of a woman who drowned her children in a fit of madness. She wanders near bodies of water, crying and searching for her lost children. Carlos, a skeptic, decided to investigate the legend for a documentary. He set up camp near a river where sightings of La Llorona were frequent. As night fell, he heard a mournful wail in the distance. Grabbing his camera, he followed the sound to the riverbank. There, he saw her, a woman in a tattered white dress, her face hidden by a veil. She was crying, her sobs filled with anguish. Carlos approached her, asking if she needed help. Slowly, she turned to face him, and her veil slipped, revealing a gaunt, skeletal face with hollow eyes. La Llorona's screams pierced the night as she lunged at Carlos. His camera captured the last moments of his terror before falling into the water. His equipment was found, but Carlos was gone, his disappearance adding to the chilling legend of La Llorona. Chapter 10. The Baba Yaga of Russia. In Russian folklore, Baba Yaga is a fearsome witch who lives in a hut that stands on chicken legs. She is known to kidnap and eat children, and her very name evokes fear. Nadia, a curious teenager, ventured into the dense forest of Russia, searching for Baba Yaga's hut. She dismissed the warnings of her elders, convinced it was just a story. As night fell, she found herself hopelessly lost. The trees seemed to close in on her, and an eerie silence enveloped the forest. Suddenly, she saw it, a hut perched on giant chicken legs, surrounded by a fence made of bones. The door creaked open, and Baba Yaga emerged, her eyes gleaming with malice. Nadia tried to run, but the forest itself seemed to conspire against her, roots and branches tripping her up. Baba Yaga's cackle echoed through the night as she grabbed Nadia, dragging her into the hut. The door slammed shut, and Nadia's screams faded into the darkness. The villagers say that those who venture into the forest never return, taken by Baba Yaga to join her gruesome collection. The Forbidden Island of Dolls, Mexico. In the depths of the Xochimilco canals in Mexico City lies a secluded island known as La Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. The island's origin is as tragic as it is terrifying. The legend tells of Don Julian Santana Barrera, who discovered a drowned girl in the canal. To honor her spirit, he hung her doll on a tree. Over time, more dolls appeared, some missing limbs or heads, making the island a macabre display of lifeless eyes staring from the trees. Tourists who dare visit the island report hearing whispers, giggles, and the doll's eyes following their every move. One night, a group of friends, enticed by the legend, decided to spend the night on the island. They set up camp near the hut where Don Julian had lived. As darkness fell, the air grew heavy and the whispers began. Fear turned to panic when one friend saw a doll's head turn to face him. They fled, but the doll's eyes haunted them for weeks, and some never spoke of that night again. The Slit-Mouthed Woman, Japan. In Japan, the legend of Kuchisake Onna, or the Slit-Mouthed Woman, strikes fear into the hearts of children and adults alike. The story dates back to the Heian period and tells of a beautiful woman who was disfigured by her jealous husband. He slit her mouth from ear to ear, screaming, "Who will think you're beautiful now?" The legend persists that Kuchisake Onna wanders the streets, wearing a surgical mask to conceal her gruesome smile. She approaches her victims asking, "Am I beautiful?" If they respond no, she kills them with a pair of scissors. If they say yes, she removes her mask and asks again. A yes leads to her slashing their mouths like hers. A no results in immediate death. A late-night walker in Tokyo encountered her one foggy evening. Startled by her question, he hesitated before stammering, "Yes." When she revealed her mutilated face, he screamed and ran. The next morning, he awoke with a deep slash across his mouth, a haunting reminder of his encounter. The Wendigo, North America. Deep in the forests of the United States and Canada, the Wendigo legend has been whispered around campfires for centuries. The Wendigo is said to be a malevolent spirit that possesses those who indulge in cannibalism. The creature is described as gaunt, with glowing eyes, sharp claws, and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. During a harsh winter, a group of hunters found themselves trapped in the wilderness. Starving and desperate, they succumbed to cannibalism. The lone survivor, John, returned to civilization but was haunted by nightmares of a creature stalking him. As the days passed, John became increasingly paranoid, convinced the Wendigo was after him. One night, John's neighbors heard blood-curdling screams coming from his cabin. When they investigated, they found the cabin empty, except for claw marks and a chilling message carved into the wall. "I am the Wendigo now." The Midnight Game, Europe. The Midnight Game is a ritual that is said to summon the Midnight Man, a spirit that will come after those who play the game. The game begins at midnight, and participants must light a candle, write their name on a piece of paper, and knock on their door 22 times. After this, they must wander their house with the candle lit until 3:33 a.m. without letting it go out. A group of college students decided to play the Midnight Game as a dare. At first, it seemed like harmless fun, but as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and a sense of dread filled the air. One by one, the students' candles went out, and the Midnight Man appeared as a shadowy figure, chasing them through the house. By 3:33 a.m., only one student remained, huddled in a corner with her candle barely flickering. When the clock struck, the figure vanished, but the survivors never spoke of that night again, and the house was abandoned soon after. The Chupacabra, Latin America. The Chupacabra, or goat-sucker, is a creature believed to inhabit parts of Latin America. The legend describes it as a reptilian creature with spines along its back, and it preys on livestock, draining their blood. In a small village in Puerto Rico, a series of livestock deaths left the community terrified. Animals were found with puncture wounds and completely drained of blood. A farmer named Miguel claimed to have seen the Chupacabra lurking near his property. Determined to protect his livestock, Miguel set traps and stayed up nights with a shotgun. One night, he heard rustling and saw a shadowy figure near his barn. As he approached, the creature lunged at him, its red eyes glowing in the dark. Miguel fired his shotgun, but the creature vanished. The next morning, Miguel was found unconscious, with deep scratches and a chilling warning carved into his barn. Next time, it's you. The Mothman, USA. The Mothman is a legendary creature said to inhabit the area around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Described as a man-sized bird with glowing red eyes, the Mothman is believed to be an omen of disaster. In the 1960s, numerous sightings of the Mothman were reported, culminating in the collapse of the Silver Bridge, which killed 46 people. A journalist named Richard Gere was fascinated by the legend and decided to investigate. He interviewed witnesses and spent nights in the woods, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature. One foggy night, Richard saw the Mothman standing on a bridge, its eyes glowing. As he approached, the creature let out a high-pitched screech and flew away. Richard's investigation unearthed disturbing connections between the sightings and other disasters. He concluded that the Mothman was not just an omen, but a harbinger of doom. The Aokigahara Forest, Japan. The Aokigahara Forest, also known as the Suicide Forest, lies at the base of Mount Fuji. The forest is infamous for the high number of suicides that occur there, and it is said to be haunted by the spirits of those who have died. A paranormal investigator named Yuki ventured into the forest to document its eerie phenomena. She quickly realized the forest was not just a place of death, but a portal to the spirit world. Strange noises, whispers, and ghostly apparitions plagued her every step. One night, Yuki heard a voice calling her name. She followed it to a clearing where she saw a figure hanging from a tree. As she approached, the figure's eyes snapped open, and it let out a blood-curdling scream. Yuki fled the forest, but the spirits followed her home. She was never the same again, plagued by nightmares and the feeling of being watched. The Crying Boy Painting, Europe. The Crying Boy is a painting said to be cursed. The legend claims that homes containing the painting are doomed to suffer fires, yet the painting always survives unscathed. A collector named David purchased the painting at a flea market, dismissing the curse as superstition. Soon after, his house caught fire, but the painting remained untouched. Undeterred, David hung the painting in his new home, but tragedy struck again with another fire. Desperate to break the curse, David researched the painting's origin and discovered a trail of fires linked to it. He decided to destroy it, but as he set it ablaze, the crying boy's eyes seemed to follow him, and the flames roared with unnatural intensity. David's house burned down, and he barely escaped with his life, vowing never to dismiss a legend again. The Bell Witch, USA. The Bell Witch is a poltergeist legend from Tennessee, centered around the Bell family in the early 19th century. The witch tormented the family, particularly John Bell and his daughter Betsy, with terrifying apparitions and violent attacks. A modern-day descendant of the Bell family, Jessica, decided to investigate the legend for a documentary. She stayed in the old Bell farm, now a historic site. Almost immediately, strange occurrences began. Objects moved on their own, disembodied voices whispered, and shadows lurked in the corners. One night, Jessica was violently thrown from her bed by an unseen force. The attacks intensified, and she found a message scratched into her arm: "Leave now." Jessica fled the farm, her documentary unfinished, and the Bell Witch legend remained a chilling reminder of the past. The Headless Horseman, USA. The legend of the Headless Horseman originates from Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but many believe it to be based on older tales of a decapitated soldier seeking his head. In Sleepy Hollow, New York, a historian named Thomas delved into the legend, hoping to uncover the truth. He spent nights in the old cemetery where the horseman was said to ride. On the third night, Thomas heard the sound of hooves and saw a headless figure on a black horse charging towards him. Frozen in terror, Thomas watched as the horseman swung a sword, narrowly missing him. The apparition vanished, but Thomas knew he had encountered the real headless horseman. His research took a dark turn as he uncovered accounts of similar sightings throughout history, each more terrifying than the last.